Hey everyone, my name is Emma and welcome back to Emma's Story Central, your center for all the best stories on Reddit. I, female 27, am recently as of mid-December engaged to my fiancé, 27M. My future mother-in-law, I've generally gotten along with. I'm kind of torn on my general feelings for her. She's generally a nice person, and we've always gotten along well, and she's been very welcoming towards me in general, even going over the top at times. However, she can be a bit overbearing and controlling, with a lack of respect for boundaries, but everyone thinks she's such a nice person, and my fiancé always seems to think she's in the right. We have had a good relationship so far, which is why I'm super confused about this situation now, and wondering if I'm overreacting, or if she is being ridiculous here. Context: my fiancé usually spends Christmas with his sister and his mom. This year, his sister got COVID at work, and their mom caught it. As a result, my fiancé spent Christmas with my family. Christmas is a big deal to mother-in-law. The three of them have some traditions, including eating a specific Christmas Eve dish, opening stockings, and then mother-in-law's sister and hubby visiting on Christmas Day. Because they weren't able to spend Christmas with my fiancé and mother-in-law's sister, my mother-in-law left her Christmas decor and stockings. She and my sister-in-law didn't open the gifts and wanted to schedule a Christmas do-over when my fiancé and I got back to town and have her sister's family over. For Christmas, I gave my mother-in-law tickets to an event I knew she'd like on a certain day. We would have gone together, figured I should try and get closer to my mother-in-law now that fiancé and I are engaged. My original plan was to stay with my family, who are in a different city, until the day before the event, my dad's birthday, then go back to our home and attend the event with my mother-in-law. This was more inconvenient for me in terms of travel plans, flight times, ticket prices, etc. But I wanted to maintain a good relationship with my mother-in-law, especially now that my fiancé and I are engaged, and it was an event related to something she really likes, and I also really wanted to be there for my dad's birthday. If not for the event, I would have traveled home on a different day and been able to get a cheaper plane ticket. After the COVID Christmas problem, my mother-in-law was trying to reschedule a Christmas event. Mother-in-law tells us that the only time we can do the event happens to be a weekend in January and the same weekend as the event. Complicated logistics, including her sister having a busy schedule and being unavailable any other weekend in January, and mother-in-law not wanting to leave her decorations up any longer, and sister-in-law's only being available that weekend on the day of the event I gave mother-in-law tickets to because of her work. Originally, my mother-in-law wanted to do Christmas Eve that Friday, and then Christmas morning, the day of the event I had gotten her tickets for. At first, she tried to act like this could still work around the event, even though the event would have taken up most of the day, but it quickly became apparent that both would not work out. To get to mother-in-law's event, my fiancé and I would have to fly out the evening of my dad's birthday, getting home around midnight, and then an hour-and-a-half train ride at 8 a.m. the next morning to get to mother-in-law. Fiancé doesn't drive and my car is getting repaired. Originally, fiancé really wanted to get to Christmas Eve the night before, which would have entailed a more expensive flight to a city nearer to mother-in-law, or taking a late evening train to her place from ours, which I talked him out of. I was a little hurt, but didn't say anything since life happens, and I didn't want to be difficult as she was already complaining about being stressed over replanning Christmas. The tickets for the event weren't cheap, but they didn't break the bank either. I figured since we weren't going to the event, I could just leave on a later date, where the airfare and travel times would be significantly more convenient, and wouldn't have to leave the evening of my dad's birthday and could stay the whole day. However, when I suggested this, fiancé got upset and said I had been planning to go back on a certain day anyway, and it meant a lot to him that I was there, since I'm becoming part of the family. He told my mother-in-law that I was thinking of not coming, but without the added context of travel convenience and my dad's birthday. So it seemed to come off to her as me being petty and bailing because we couldn't go to the event I'd gotten her tickets for. I was extremely embarrassed because she called fiancé and asked to talk to me, and talked about how it came off as hurtful that I didn't want to come. And it shouldn't be a big deal since I was planning to come back that day anyway, that she and Santa had gifts for everyone including me, and it's important that I'm there since I'm part of the family. I was a little frustrated since the way my fiancé painted it was already making me look difficult. End result for the event being that Christmas Eve would be Friday, and sister-in-law would come up. Then Christmas would be Saturday, and mother-in-law's sister and her family would come up for Christmas dinner. Fiancé and I would fly in the night before and take an early train the next morning, and I would stay up late the night before to make and bring dessert. Next, a few days later, mother-in-law lets us know that instead of the typical Christmas dinner that they usually do, traditional protein and holiday sides, they would be doing their typical Christmas Eve dinner instead, which is a dish that I can't eat on the diet I follow. Mother-in-law knows this very well. Typically, they eat this on Christmas Eve with just a salad as a side. It's a pretty heavy dish, and not at all a typical Christmas holiday dish. Their dish is simple, relatively unhealthy comfort food and seems kind of awful to me, but for some unknown reason this was their holiday tradition growing up. Hearing this, I doubly didn't want to come. I have to leave on my dad's birthday, stay up late cooking, and take a train to Christmas where I can't even eat the food. But it was very important to my fiancé, so I figured I'd suck it up. Fiancé said my mother-in-law could buy ingredients and I could make something there, or that I could make some additional side dishes for everyone. I figured I could throw something together for myself with whatever was in the fridge, but wouldn't make anything additional for everyone on top of the dessert I was already making, since it felt pointless to make additional dishes for everyone if everyone else was already happy with what was being served. And since I would be coming off of a lot of travel, very little sleep, and making dessert for the event. Now here's where it gets really crazy. Due to winter storms, my mother-in-law called us today, saying that the kitchen wall of her duplex has been damaged, and the entire wall needs to be replaced. The work will be commencing soon, and she may not have access to her kitchen for the foreseeable future, and Christmas is coming up. In spite of all my frustrations over this event in general, I knew it was important to her and to fiancé, and I'd already agreed to go, so I tried to help. I offered to cook a protein and side dishes at our place in the morning, and we'd take a slightly later train to get to my mother-in-law's, and then we could cook the food on her grill. It almost seemed like a bit of a blessing in disguise, since now we could make something else instead of their god-awful traditional Christmas Eve dish. Mother-in-law suggested that she could make the main dish ahead of time and bake it in her neighbor's oven. She calls us later in the day with another update. All of her kitchen appliances, fridge, stove, microwave, will be out of commission, and the work on the wall will be starting, so functionally there will be no kitchen. She's still saying it will work just fine for her to make the Christmas Eve dish ahead of time and use her neighbor's oven. But her neighbor was having an event on the same day, so mother-in-law would have to bake the dish in the morning and then be out. And mother-in-law will have no microwave or refrigerator at her place. At that point, things were sounding worse and worse. No kitchen or appliances and potentially tarps all over the place and holes in the wall. So I suggested that maybe we could do the event and mine and fiancé's place, and mother-in-law could bring some of her decorations over. Our place is bigger than mother-in-law's, though not decorated for Christmas, as both fiancé and I left for the holidays. Also, our place is essentially around a midpoint between mother-in-law's and everyone else coming, so it would take sister-in-law and mother-in-law's sister an hour and a half less to get to our place. Plus, mother-in-law currently has a car, but mine is in the shop, so fiancé and I would have to take a train, and mother-in-law didn't want to be unreasonable and ask if her sister's family could pick us up, since they would already be driving sister-in-law home in the evening. My mother-in-law lives about an hour north of the city we all live in. Fiancé and I live in the city. My sister-in-law lives about an hour east, and my mother-in-law's sister lives an hour south. Takes fiancé and I about an hour and a half to get to mother-in-law, and it takes sister-in-law and mother-in-law's sister about 2 or 2.5 hours each. At that point, mother-in-law's tone sounded shocked and offended by the suggestion, and she insisted that it be at hers, since that was where they always did it, and the stockings were already hung up, and it's about being together as a family anyway, and we would make it work somehow. Mother-in-law told us that her sister couldn't pick us up anyway, since it was too much effort for sister, since sister would be driving sister-in-law home at the end of the event, and that we were welcome to bring whatever we want. But she stressed how much she didn't want us to be inconvenienced or do extra work since we'd have to take it on the train. Fiancé defended the mother-in-law, saying that she had already left the decorations up this long and it was important to her. He had been insisting the whole time that they were trying to make me feel welcome and said I could bring whatever I wanted to eat or cook whatever I wanted if I didn't want to eat their Christmas Eve dish. However, in the phone call with mother-in-law, she said she didn't want us bringing too much stuff and made a huge deal about how she just didn't want to inconvenience us, and whatever we bring we should keep it simple, even though she knows I can't eat the food she plans to be serving, and she doesn't have a refrigerator or kitchen now where I could make myself anything different anyway. And everyone who is eating the dish will likely just have to eat it cold since she has no microwave or stove now. I was honestly floored. I mean, you're making 5 different people, me, fiancé, sister-in-law, mother-in-law's sister plus husband, travel long distances to an event you're hosting, and you won't change the date or location even though it's a partially food-centric event. And you have no kitchen. I was griping a little about it all, not to my mother-in-law, just to my fiancé, and my fiancé got upset with me and complained that I was criticizing his mom too much and that I was being unreasonable. I'm honestly super torn here. I mean, mother-in-law is usually a nice person and she's never seemed to be against me or try to push my fiancé and I apart before. She's usually just nice but with a bit of an obnoxiously naive demeanor and cluelessness. Think myself from Enchanted, but more frustrating. She also tends to be a bit selfish at times and insists on getting her way, while acting, along with everyone else around her, like she's being perfectly reasonable. Like insisting fiancé, and I drive up to her place because it's a long drive for her. We visit her more often than she's visited us, and in general basically controlling and getting her way, while seeming like she's not, and fiancé just goes with it because he loves his mom. I wonder if I'm overreacting or being too harsh on my mother-in-law. I understand that it's a tradition and Christmas is important to her, but if it's inconveniencing everyone else involved, and she doesn't even have a functional kitchen, especially when she said that the family togetherness was the most important part anyway. Feels like she's being selfish because she's not only insisted on having it on an inconvenient day for everyone but herself and her sister's family, but now refusing to have it at a more convenient location for everyone else involved just because she's had her decorations up so long already. And telling us not to bring things unless we really want it to for our own convenience, even though she knows I can't eat the food they have and I now will have no way to make my own meal once I get there. I just want to know if I'm the crazy one here or not. Everyone sucks here. I would tell your fiancé that he has a choice to make, because this is a loyalty test and she wants to know she still comes first in everyone's life. He can jump through all his mother's very unreasonable hoops, force you both to lose sleep and be uncomfortable to go to a dinner where there is no proper food available for you. The person he is supposed to leave his mother for and cleave to in order to create a new family and future for himself. Not an idiot. Oh wow. No, you are not crazy and you are not the problem here. The mother-in-law is just heavily invested in her happy family Christmas fantasy. It's possible that she's realized that her kids are grown and going their own ways, so there is an end in sight that she's just not ready to accept. But her kids love her, so they are bending over backwards. Life happens and things will inevitably change. You would not have been wrong to have stated that you already had plans to be out of town, and while you would have loved to be there, it would not be fair to your father to cut out early on his birthday. I'm sure she understands how important family events are, etc. However, it's a bit late at this point since you already caved. In the future, if you already have plans scheduled, politely refuse to change them to accommodate her scheduled changes outside of a medical emergency. On second thought, is it too late? As for the food, it isn't for your own convenience, it is for your health. Take your own food and borrow a small toaster oven or microwave to lug over too. Just because the kitchen is out of commission, it doesn't mean that there aren't other electric outlets elsewhere in the house.